Hey, it's Joey Balladonna here from Anthrax, and this is SAGAS.
Well,
look, this is a big one.
I didn't break out and join the podcast today.
It is now time for Devil's Advocate. Same time, same place, awesome. Again, for making time, we're working with 3 different time zones, which is pretty cool.
Holy shit! All right.
Yeah, Germany, Ireland, and Australia. So this could be a first in history. I don't know, but
3 different distinct accents. That's gonna be a whole other level.
yes, I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
So look, for the audience at home, we're going to be talking about the album "Fear Is the Enemy," which was recommended by you yourself when talking to you. What album you talk about? So, yeah. Do you just want to tell us first of all, just a little bit about the album? Just a little thing for listeners who may not have heard it.
Well, Fear Is the Enemy is definitely super special for me personally because it was my first solo album. It's been 10 years exactly, so that's kind of a big deal, which I completely forgot about until a couple of weeks ago. So it's that anniversary. And it also kickstarted what you could consider my wider career in music back when it came out in a big way. So.
Yeah, nice. Ren?
Yeah, I have to say, first of all, thanks so much again for coming on, brother. It's a pleasure chatting to you. I am a guitar man as well on a different scale, but my first question always to very skilled individuals of their instrument, I love asking them what it was that inspired you to play in the first place, and for you specifically, what started you on the fretless guitar?
Well, what started me was coming up in a musical family because my dad used to be in bands. He used to be a guitar player and singer. He still is, actually. And so dad was always around. And then we had friends coming to the house, trading CDs, trading vinyl. And my dad also ran a vinyl record shop for a number of years. So I've got exposed to a lot of different stuff through that. And then one day there was this CD in the house, and I had already played and had lessons for classical guitar for a while, but that was more like my parents' wish, right? To get the boy started in the proper field, right? And then there was the CD suddenly laying there, and it was Joe Satriani, Time Machine, if you guys know that one. So
nice.
That's, yeah, right? You guys remember the cover for that one?
Yeah.
Yeah? So for those who don't know, it's him. It's like a computer animation kind of thing where he's holding a guitar and he has like long flowing hair at that point still, and then he's jumping from like one giant space clock to the next. And I thought, like, this is gonna be the coolest fucking shit I've ever seen. I want to be that guy.
Yeah. Amazing.
Right. Then I put it on, and like the first couple of seconds, like a drum fill, the dum 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 bum bum back, the dum 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 dak dum, and then there's like this massive chord coming in just with a billion guitars at once, and it literally blew my hair back when I listened to it in my dad's living room, and that was the moment I knew what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
Amazing. And so, at what stage did you decide, right, I'm going fretless?
It's kind of a funny story actually, because I was a giant fan of this guitar player called Bumblefoot, who since then got onto playing Guns N' Roses and all of these like super well-known bands. But at that time, he was just a total underground dude that only like the real ones knew about, right? And I got into him through tape trading and friends that I had in the guitar scene. And then I played a gig with my first band, with my, you could say, high school band. And I had a Steve Vai signature guitar, like the jam, and that was like my pride and joy. It's like, look at what I got, right? And it had the memory bar. And as you do when you're like in your late teens and you're a guitar player and you just you have the fire and the fury burning, and you abuse the shit out of that thing. So I did, and and it broke on stage. It literally like came out and exploded, and so the gig was cut short, and I didn't have any other guitar to fill the slot. Like I was just a kid, and so I thought, okay, well, I need to do something with this guitar, and if I have it fixed, what do I do? Like I need to do something cool. So I considered putting in like a MIDI pickup and do some, flute solos and shit. But then I remembered how exciting it was that this guy Bumblefoot, he played a fretless guitar, and so I went to this local repair shop and asked them, well, could you make this fretless? And they said, well, I don't know, but I could try. And try he did, and lo and behold, and I had a fretless guitar.
Wow.
And that was that.
That's incredible. I have a buddy of mine that I play music with from time to time, and he went to I think it was like a school of guitar with Ron. He'd done it over here in Donegal in Ireland, and yeah. Oh, when I tell him that story, that's where you got the idea of fretless from, he's gonna be really excited. That's so cool.
Nice. Yeah. Tell him I said hi.
Will do, buddy.
So regarding the album, I want to know, like, what was your mindset going into it? What vision did you have for the album to sound, and do you think you accomplished what was in your head for the album?
Oof, that's an interesting question. I think I need to give you a little bit of background of where I was at that particular time, because that was before I had any sort of career. I was like the quintessential struggling guitar player. So before I finished the album, you couldn't say done, but before I finished the album, it was just a bunch of songs that I had written when I was like 17, 18, 19. So the material on the album dates back to that time. And I had written and produced and recorded a whole solo album when I was 18. It wasn't good, that much I can tell you, but it was what I did. And there was a bunch of events in my life that led to me not pursuing that for a long time. And then in my mid-20s, I went through a very tough period where I had heart surgery twice, and also my kids were born around that time. So I was not making any money, I wasn't playing in any bands that were going somewhere. Nobody knew who I was, and I came out of the hospital after the operation thinking, well, that could have also just gone completely sideways. I could have also not made it. I'm happy that I did, but what do I do now? Because now it seems like everything has been put into perspective, if that makes any sense, and I need to reevaluate where I am and what I want to do. And it could also happen again. It wasn't like my health problems at that point were magically gone. So I didn't know what was going to happen. And so I thought, well, I've got all this music that nobody's ever heard, and I've been sitting on it for such a long time, and now that I feel the clock ticking, so to speak, I think I need to do something with this. Like, if tomorrow I die, then at least I can say, well, I did this thing that I didn't make any compromises on it, and I followed these creative impulses through to the end. That's what I wanted. That was my only expectation at that point.
Well, I just must say that album, especially how young you were, it's just incredible. It's an amazing album, and I'll just leave on that for Ren to start his question.
Sick. Yeah, no, honestly, I have so many questions I want to ask you that's not album related, but when we talk about the album, it's absolutely killer. Like, it's beautifully crafted music in every sense of the word. And I know you're heavily involved in juicing element and everything as well. And it just shows how gifted you are as an individual in the music world. But where did the name Fountainhead come from? Have you a story behind that?
It's a lot less spectacular than you might think.
Okay.
So you know how when you're young, you're full of dreams and ambitions and also arrogance. So way before anything actually happened, I was like, I'm gonna be like the most famous guitar player everybody's ever seen, clearly, right? So that's the kind of shit that goes through your head at 15 when you can play your first couple of sweep arpeggios. And so I thought, well, but my last name kind of stands in the way of that, like Getschläger. Nobody can pronounce that outside of Germany, right? Even in Germany, it's not a very sexy name to have. So I thought, well, there's Buckethead, there's Bumblefoot, there's these guitar players that I really like and look up to, and they use these cool synonyms. I don't know what that's called in English, but you know what I mean. These aliases, yeah. And so I gotta have that. And then for some reason, I don't remember how, but I came upon the term Fountainhead. I was like, that sounds close enough. Let's use that. So I used that for years, and then I was on tour with a band, and the lead singer was like, Fountainhead, I have that book. Have you ever read it? It's like, book? Wait, what book? And then she lent me the book, and I read it, and I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. And I had no idea that it had such a deep meaning for a lot of people, and that it's quite a controversial book and a controversial author, and many people get worked up like talking about it and the ideas behind it, and that none of that actually had played a role in me choosing that name at I don't know, also 17, 18, something.
It is a very cool story. You downplayed it.
Oh, thank you.
Very cool, very cool.
So again, going back to the album, kind of playing off his question, where did the album title come from? Fear is the Enemy.
Ooh, I wasn't prepared for that question. Because I clearly forgot.
Well,
I mean,
fair enough.
They actually have come from the book. The song title, I Do and I Will, that is actually straight from the book.
Ah, sweet.
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry, go.
Yeah. It could have been from the book, but it was also an expression of where I was in terms of headspace at that time, because if you have heart surgery, any kind of surgery, but especially heart surgery, there's a lot of fear and anxiety coming with that, and it doesn't really matter if it's severe or if it's a minor surgery, a major surgery, anything to do with your heart, your motor, it's just going to be filling your life with anxiety and fear, and that has also been like a constant in my life because I do come from a family of mental illness, and especially my mother has been struggling with like fear and anxiety around like a bunch of things for her entire life. So that has, like, when I came out of the operation room, so to speak, then fear being something that I did not want to accept as something that would be shaping my life and ruling my life anymore was really important to me at that time.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I want to hear the amount of times I listened to this album. The one thing I want to know about is, as you just said, the song "I Do and I Will." That is my favorite song of the album, and it sounds like a guitar orchestral masterpiece. I don't really know if that makes sense, but I want to know, like, tell me about, like, how did that song come to be? What was the process? How long did it take? I want to know everything about that song.
Well, first of all, thank you, because that is my favorite as well from the album. I mean, I go back and forth, but that is a special song to me. So, like I said, all of these pieces on the album, without exception, they came from That's not true, actually. The last song, Electric Lullaby, that was written at that time because that was specifically influenced by the birth of my first kid. But
Nice.
all of the other pieces, they really date back to me being 17, 18 years old, sitting in my mom's room, basically, because I didn't have a computer on my own, and then skipping school and working on this stuff. And sorry, Mom.
Love it.
Yeah. So basically, at that point, you're like a sponge, right? You haven't really developed a style or your own identity. But what you are is a sponge to this influence and that, blah blah blah, all these things. And so what I would do at that point, I would dream up songs, and I would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night. I was like, oh, I got the song idea, and mostly it worked like, what if, like all these what ifs would be dictating a song idea. Like, what if I had a song that was this long and it has this structure and I got these instruments, and before I wrote and recorded and produced any note, I would have these ideas. This is how I always have been working and writing music. I'd have these ideas of a structure, of something, of a combination of elements maybe that I personally hadn't heard before but would be interesting. And so basically I just took these things that I was interested in, that I was listening to at that point, which was even then like a super wild combination of stuff from all sorts of the musical globe, like world music, progressive metal, death metal. Even then, I was a fan of Meshuggah back in the 90s, and little bit of jazz, but also classical music, orchestral music. I was a complete hack. I mean, I'm to this day, I'm a hack in most of these fields, but what I am is just a giant fan of music. And so I just try to piece together different ways of combining these favorite things of mine in creative ways, and that I made little demos of them, like to the best of my abilities. So what remains of these demos are the structures behind the song. So in the example of I Do and I Will, just starting with strings and starting with these orchestral textures, and then there's a guitar theme emerging, and then it grows and it grows bigger, and then it has these almost like a waterfall-y quality when the strings just start cascading and the drums come in, and then there's this massive riff coming in before we go into the main melody theme. So this is my thought process. I'd be sitting there and dreaming up how that would work and how that would go from one part to the next, and then I would try out different ways of getting as close as possible to what I was hearing in my head. And so obviously at that point, it was like when I was still a teenager and coming up with these structures, it was very far from what was in here to what I was able to do. But then in the years between these demos, or what was my first solo album at that point, to actually coming to Fear. Oh, are we losing connection here?
Oh no, you're back.
No.
You're back.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Internet connection. Don't you dare interrupt my monologue. Yeah, my girlfriend can tell you I do love a really good monologue. So anyway, in the time between coming up with these structures and then sitting down and in mid-20s and doing Fears the Enemy and finishing it, I had made like I told you guys, I was not a successful musician with a career at all. But what I had done was just put myself into so many different situations musically. I played jazz terribly, but I did. I almost went to university studying jazz. I played piano. I had lessons with a super cool piano arranging composition guy who showed me a lot of things. I had one of my closest friends at that time, still to this day, Matthias, was coming into my life, who then became responsible for the orchestrations, and he's like a trained classical musician. And I played in all these different bands, all the way from like the craziest tech death metal to I remember I was in a band at that point when I was working on that album where it was a mix of progressive metal, like Dream Theater-ish, but also like Balkan style klezmer folk music. And so all of these things just provided a background where I would say, well, I do think that now I have a bigger palette and a bigger set of tools to revisit these pieces of music and then try to get a lot closer to what I was hearing in my head originally. And I'm happy to say I did.
Nice. This song, I'm not sure if you've heard of this band, but when I was listening to that song, it reminded me of the band Godspeed You Black Emperor. That's what
interesting.
Me. Yeah, I love that band. So yeah.
Not an influence at all. And I think I discovered them later, like many years after Fierce the Enemy was done. But that's I take that as a compliment. Cool.
Yes, very good band and very good song, right?
Guys, I've been sitting here this whole time and I've been looking at your beautiful array of guitars behind you, and I've been trying not to say anything about it, but I can't take it anymore. So you're endorsed by a beautiful guitar company. Can you tell us about them and your guitars?
Sure. I mean, you have to remember the album that we're speaking of, that was done mostly with borrowed equipment. There was no endorsement deals, no fancy shit at that point. But I am very fortunate and very happy to be working with Aristides guitars from the Netherlands. So that is my main fretless 7-string here from Aristides.
Beautiful. Look at that fret. Wow.
Yeah, I got to tell you guys really quickly, this past weekend we did a video shoot for my newest album, and we had a laser, and then standing there and have the laser shoot into the fretboard. There are tiny lasers coming out, just so something that you love.
Class. Oh, brilliant. I absolutely love it.
And of course I got a bunch of fretted instruments from Aristides as well.
That's sick.
One. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Amazing.
They're works of art.
They are works of art, and I really do. Like, everybody says that when they are endorsed, but I really do feel that these are the best guitars on the market for heavy music, at least. And they've made my life so much easier. Like, I've been endorsed before, and I was working with the Swiss company, Soul Tool, and they made super beautiful instruments. But you have to imagine that this, for example, which was my first custom fretless guitar, that weighs like 8 kilograms or something. But that's a heavy guitar. Yeah. And I've been having neck problems for many years. That's one thing that happens if you have 2 kids and you headbang on stage and you do all this stuff. You work out, and at some point you turn mid-30s and you're like, I don't think this is working anymore. So having the ability to be working with a company like Aristides, where this fretless guitar here weighs less than half of what I used to have for fretless 7-string, it's just even just that is a game changer for me, and really important. but then, you know, it goes on. Then there's the quality, then there's like how they sit in the mix, how, you know, the things that I can do with them versus with other guitar companies. So I'm like shout out to Pascal and the team and Aristides. They are really, really amazing. And so that was not even conceivable at the time I did Fear is the Enemy. But I'm in the process of finishing my newest album right now, and it's all Aristides on that one. Start to finish.
Absolutely amazing. It's, you know, it's beautiful to hear you speak about the progress, you know, from the beginning, even from your childhood. You know, I love that. It really gives a lovely sense of what you've put into your music, you know, and to see results like, you know, your endorsement and the new album, which I can't wait to hear. It's so super exciting, brother. Well done. Fair play.
And it is the hardest job in many ways, but it's also the best job. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I go back and forth. Sometimes I'm grumpy. Sometimes I'm like, fuck this shit. But most days I am so grateful to still be here and still be doing this, and people still being waiting for me to put out stuff. And I try to consistently get better at navigating that and make the most of it that I can. So,
yeah, I mean, even the things like, I mean, you got to support one of my favorites and probably every guitar player in the world's favorite musician, guitar wise. You got to play with him or support him with Nicholas Meyer, or am I pronouncing that right? In was it France and Spain or something? You played supporting Steve Vai himself.
That wasn't me. That was my friend Aaron, the bass player.
Oh, was it?
It's interesting that you say that because I have some
Yeah,
Nicholas
right.
Meyer.
Ah, nice.
But yeah, I like Nick is a master, obviously, but I've never met him so far.
Right. So bad intel there. My friend got me all excited there telling me this. But so one other thing about instruments before we move on, because I'm just a big guitar and gear nerd. And I wreck Corbin's head because every time I get a chance to talk about stuff. So you play Engel guitars, is that correct? Or amps?
Yes and no. So I do have an endorsement with Engel, which goes back to the Obscura days. I currently I haven't been using the amps in a while, though. I hope I can get back to that, but just circumstances dictated that we haven't done something together for a while. You know, like I was last year, I was out with a band called Belfigor, if you guys know that, and they only use Mesa rectifiers, for example. There's like no way that you could change that. So sometimes that is what you have to do if you are making a living as a musician. So as much as you're grateful for the support of these companies, sometimes you have to navigate that and can't really always make it work out, with the equipment that you would use.
That's it. Happy days. Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask because, a player like you deserves all those quality amps, you know. I mean, Mesa as well. Can't go wrong.
I appreciate that. But first of all, we need those endorsements because you're fucking penniless most of the time. So any type of, percentage of a product is already a win for musician. And people often don't understand that. They're like, why did you move from this company to next? I got so attached to what you did with that. And they're like, bro, there's usually a deeper reason, and it's not just musicians' whims or something. It's hard reality of you needing something to make your day job work, right?
Yeah.
So in my case, for example, tour support or the ability to have instruments that are not as heavy is just a major factor. It's not about just what I like in the guitar company. It's also what my body demands and like what I can afford and blah blah blah. So yeah, I wish it was more romantic like that, but
sure.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It's so cool hearing you guys talk because, like, obviously, I'm just a humble sushi chef. I'm not actually in the music industry, but still, it's very cool. Now going back to the first album, obviously, and obviously, you've already explained you were younger when you wrote those songs. But I'm curious, was there any specific media, like any movies, music, or books that you were reading or consuming during that time that may have influenced the sound? Because sometimes that happens. Sometimes people will like watch things or read or listen to things, and it will inspire how a certain song or album comes out.
Right. Oh man, it's a long time ago, so I don't think I can give you a very definitive answer on that. But there's definitely some influence in the album of things that I had been consuming even earlier, like when I was a teenager. A lot of there's not so many left in the album, but there was a lot of movie samples and little pieces of dialogue in the original demos, and they do come from movies like Studio Ghibli movies, for example, like Spirited Away, or movies like Blade Runner, Cyberpunk, this kind of stuff, right? So that was definitely an influence, but not. I mean, the nature of my music has always been that it sounds a little bit like arrogant, but it's not meant that way. It's like what I've always done is create multi-layered music. It's always been something really important for me to do things that work on multiple levels and create and combine multiple influences. So I've never been, like, not to look down on people who do that, but I've never been one to say, let's write the most power metal song ever, and and go really deep into a certain genre. I mean, I have been doing that with bands, but for myself, when I sit down to write Fountainhead music, it's always about how can I make this, how can I create something that's never been done. So by the nature of it, you need to draw from really different influences, emotions, and different experiences to make that happen. At least that's how it is for me. Maybe there's some people who can, like Jacob Collier, who can just sit down and be genius. So I can't do that. I need to draw from a wide variety of things to make that happen if I can.
Yeah.
I can't get over how humble you are. Like to say stuff like not being a genius and so it just it just blows my mind. But I have to show you, bro. I have like a Spirited Away tattoo on my arm. I don't know if the camera.
Oh, that's fucking awesome, man.
Yeah, Spirited Away there, and there's a couple of other Ghiblis. So it's funny actually because I love the idea of Ghibli, the music, and now that you've said that, I can hear that whimsical, that kind of like hopeful, because I listen to your guitar playing these flowy melodies and stuff, and man, it just clicked for me now. Love
Nailed it. Joe Hisaishi, who composed most of the Studio Ghibli movies, huge influence on me.
Nice.
Huge. Yeah.
That's beautiful, bro.
Yeah. Just the other day, I saw like a YouTube ad for an orchestral recording of some of his best known works. I was like, give me.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
Nice. Like obviously this album is very special to you, as it should be, because it's a phenomenal album. And as Ren was saying, it's even more spastic to me. It's crazy to me that you don't consider yourself a genius when you can pull off that album so young. Like at 19, I was useless. At 18, 19, I don't know what I was doing. I was borderline maniac. It wasn't good. Whatever I was doing was nothing productive. So looking back on your career so far, obviously your career's been going amazing places since this album. Where does this album rank for you personally, considering your career so far?
Oh, that's another hard question. I mean, I couldn't rank it high enough. I mean, there's since then, and you know how musicians are. Like we spend so much time like crawling into every little note on an album we're doing, so that by the end of it, we're like, this is clearly my best work ever, just by the amount of time we spent. Like it could be complete dog shit, but you're like, this is 200%. So I'm afraid I have to say it. I have the same thing as well. So I do feel like every album that I have been doing since then has been an improvement in some areas, you know. And you have to remember that also Fears the Enemy was the first time that I took the reins of mixing, production, engineering, all of these things. And even it was also the first time I worked with actual orchestral players and actual orchestration, not just like in here, but in the music. And so all of those things, I think I have been able to develop to a much, much higher level. Also guitar playing, the fretless guitar, like all of those things since then have come a long way. But I really cannot rank this album high enough in how important it was for me, because basically nobody knew who I was. And it's not like the album made any money. No, like never, ever. And it was a, pay what you want Bandcamp release and all of that. But it's made the rounds, and it made a lot of people in the industry, in the music industry, aware of who I am and what I do and what I can do. And it basically gave me a career, even though some of the connections that were important to me in me joining certain bands were there before. But then just the fact that I could give my peeps this album and say, hey, I did this thing, and then it functioning as kind of I don't know what the English term is, like Visitenkarte is what we say in German, like a calling card, like a business card. And so you give this album, and you're like, I produced it, I mixed it, I recorded it, I play all the guitars, I have a bunch of amazing musicians, there's orchestration, there's 5-minute songs, but there's also like 11-minute songs, and it does all these different things. And that was in hindsight a huge factor in basically whipping my dick out in conversation, like, this is what I do, you can also hire me.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, like for 10 years going strong, and you still have guys like myself and Corbin and in Ireland and Australia, and I have a mate in America who was chatting about this album this week. It just goes to show, what a special piece of work it is. And I for one cannot wait to hear this new work that you've been doing. I know you've been working really hard on it too, and I could just imagine, how good it's going to be. And I know you're working on a new music video. But before we wrap anything up, I wanted to ask you about the music video for Fear is the Enemy. It's absolutely killer, and and I know it was a long time ago as well, but it was a super cool video. Could you tell us about who directed it, or what kind of fun you had on the day?
Oh yeah, that's some good memories. So you have to imagine, this video was basically entirely shot in the rehearsal room of the teeny little band that I had at that time here in Berlin. So it's really just a, I don't know, 15 by 10 meter room, which is like a basement with tubes coming out of the walls and stuff like that. And we just hung a bunch of black fabric. And fortunately, his name is Martin Bahe, and now he's a professional, very successful videographer and editor, and has his own company here in Berlin. But at that time, he was just my bandmate, because in another band I was playing in called Cerebric Turmoil, we were the two guitar players, and he was like the only guy I knew who could operate cameras and had a good camera and just was doing film stuff. So I asked him to shoot the video, and fortunately he agreed. And then soon after, he realized what a nightmare it was. because we just got together, and the drummer in the video, Björn, who I was playing with at that time in a band, and also so both of these guys in the video, like the bass player and the drummer, were in my little tiny Berlin band at the time, and I couldn't really ask of them to learn the material like super in depth, and none of them had played on the album, so they really, not to take away from their abilities, but it was just a situation where I was like, how does this go again? Yeah, oh, okay. And then we had to kind of piece it together in the editing room, like Martin tearing his hair out, because I was so specific. And yeah, we just went in. We didn't have any plan. We just winged it. And the only idea that I had before we did that was, let's just I don't know, like let's take a bunch of things and put it into a ventilator so it looks like it's raining or snowing or whatever. And then we just came up with all these ideas during the shoot, basically.
But I mean, it's a killer video, and it's still, again, it also stands up to today's standard of videos, which is really cool if you're talking about, you know, a smaller budget and stuff. You know, it's really, really cool, brother. Nice.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I haven't seen it in a long time, but it's good stuff.
You look well. You look well in it.
Yeah. Nah, as Ren said, killer video, killer album. You know, it's just an overall solid project, and you know, we couldn't be. Yeah, I'm just so happy that I got to listen to it, and I'm sure Ren is as well. And like I said, we have so many people who are now interested in the album, and once this episode comes out, hopefully we can just blow your name out of the water even more, and hopefully get more people into it. So what I want to ask you, as we're coming close to wrapping this up, is, with every guest on SAGAS, we have them recommend an album for us to cover the week after. Do you have an album for us? Any album you want for us to talk about?
Oh, that's another question that I haven't seen coming. This may be a super odd choice, but lately I've been rediscovering, and it has nothing to do with what I do whatsoever, but I've been revisiting this old Overkill album. I don't know if you guys know that. It's From the Underground and Below.
Nice.
And I was surprised at how contemporary that still sounded. Like Killer Mix by Colin Richardson, cool songs, really weird song structures, but just very unique. Very unique project for them and for that period of time. So that's an album that I've been, listening to on and off, in my workouts or something. Be like, man, shit still slaps. There you go. Recommendation.
Nice.
Well, like again, thank you so much for taking up, for freeing up time to be on the podcast and for answering all our crazy questions.
It's all good, because last week I was like, I don't know if I can even take an hour, to do this podcast, because we were preparing the video shoot and I had to learn the material. But this week I'm like we can talk, we can hang and chat. I don't mind.
Well, I'm glad the timing suited. Thank you again. This will be uploaded next week, since we always do pre-records a week in advance. So this will be coming out next week, and obviously as soon as it does, I'll send it to you. I'll tag you in it. We'll make sure this blows up so that everyone can hear the album.
Well, every single person who's never heard the album and is getting to know it, I really deeply appreciate it.
Nice.
We'll make sure to skyrocket the streams on that one. Thank you again for your time, and I'm sure we'll be talking on Facebook at least sometime in the future.
Absolutely. And again, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for appreciating the album, which I also makes me feel really good. And thanks for making me revisit the album, because I never really listened to previous albums after I've done them, at least for a long time. So it's been fun going back and wrapping my brain around what I've done 10 years in the past.
Nice.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Great album, and you were a great guest. So thank you again for that.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
Bye bye.
Thank
See
you
you,
very much.
Tom. Pleasure, brother.